Introduction to exponents. So let's talk, because a lot of exponent information you already learned. It's from elementary school. There are a few misconceptions, though, that we need to address as pre-algebra students. So let's talk exponent first. An exponent. An exponent is, or something, an exponent shows repeated multiplication. An exponent is something that shows repeated multiplication. So instead of writing something down like, 10 times 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 10, we'd use an exponent. It's showing that you're just repeatedly multiplying over and over and over again. So it's identified. You can tell it's an exponent because it's a tiny number. And where is it? It's a tiny number, but where does that tiny number live, Paige? Yeah, in the top what corner? Top right corner. It's a tiny number in the top right corner. So let's kind of talk it through. Here is an exponent. Do you agree?
Yes.
Yeah. What is the exponent? How can you identify? What number represents the exponent, Refugio?
6.
6. The little tiny top number in the top right corner is an exponent. 6 is the exponent. Does anyone remember what this number is called? What the 2 in this example represents? Good, Ian. It's the base. And last question. The whole thing, do you remember what that's called? Close.
Power.
It's a power. Which is why I accidentally wrote powers when I was writing my title, right? An exponent is the little tiny number itself. Power is the whole thing. Paige said exponential notation, which is true if you're writing a number using exponents, right? But it's not really notation in the fact that we like to have an answer to it, right? We can actually do this. Exponential notation comes in handy when it's a really, really gigantic number, too big for us to work with. Okay? So let's define this a little bit. Powers have 2 parts. Powers have 2 parts. The first part is the exponent. Which is the little number. And what does that 2 to the 6th mean? What does that exponent of 6 mean? What is that 6? I mean, my exponent's 6. Julia, what does 6 mean in this problem? Yeah, it tells how many times to multiply the base. The exponent, which is that little tiny baby number, tells us how many times to multiply the base. So that's 6 in this problem. 2 to the 6th power, or 2 to the power of 6, says that I'm going to take the number 2 and I'm going to multiply it 6 times. And the base is the big number. And the base is the number that what?
We're going to multiply by.
Yeah, you get the multiplied. It gets multiplied. The exponent is the little tiny number. It's the number that tells you how many times to move it. The base is the big number that tells, like, it's the number that gets multiplied. Okay, so let's make a table. Just kidding. I want that to be a P, not a B. Okay, so we have the power and we have the value. We have our power and we have our value, and we're going to leave this first row, this is very important, leave the first row underneath here blank. All right, let's talk. What if you saw this? 12 to the first power. What does that mean?
12.
What does it mean? It means 12 how many times? So it just means 12. Right? Anything to the power of 1. Does the power of 1 change anything? No, it just means it's that number once. Not times 1, technically. It's just that number once. Right? Because the power of 2, 6 to the power of 2 means what?
36.
It means 6 times 6. 6 times itself twice. 6 times 6, 2 of them. Which is simplified, Refugio, to 36. Guess what? It works for decimals too. 0.2 to the third power. What does that mean?
0.6. I mean, wait, no.
What does it mean, Arlene? It means 0.2 3 times cubed, right? The 3 is cubed. And 0.2 times 0.2 times 0.2. A power of 3 is easy enough to do just in your calculator, right? 0.2 times 0.2 times 0.2 is, Selden? 0.0808. Got it. Because it's 2/10, 0.2, times itself 3 times. 0.2 times 0.2 times 0.2, because the exponent is 3. Okay, let's try this. -7 to the 4th. What does -7 to the 4th mean? Alexis? 4 -7s being multiplied. -7 times -7 times -7 times -7. And -7 times -7 times -7 times -7. is what, Sophia? 2,401. And let's do one more. Two more, I lied. Let's do 4.3 to the 5th. Now I'm going to show you how to do this in your calculator if you don't want to type in 4.3 times 4, right? That sometimes gets a little bit big. So use your own calculator. 4.3, yeah, you can. This button right here, it's called a caret. The button underneath it is the squared button, but I don't want it squared, I want it to the 5th power. So I'm going to press the caret button, which is my exponent button, and see how it makes my number go up top? And I'd put in 5 and press enter. It's big. Now if you're using your phone at home, on the basic 4 function, it's not on here. There's no exponent. So you have to turn it to the scientific. And most of them are, where is it? This button right here. X with a Y as an exponent. So I would type 4.3 and see how it makes the caret to the 5th. I'm not going to write it down because that's just too much stuff.
But what is the x2 and the x3?
So the x2 is squared. All right, if I did 5 squared, 5 times 5, and x to the 3 is 5 to the 3rd. It's just automatically in there. That to the y power says that you can put in your own number. Okay, so here's my trick question for you, and I'm going to show this to you. You're going to accept it right now, and we're going to talk about it on page 2 of our notes. Anything to a power of 0, do you know what that is? Not 0. Is 1. And accept it, test it, get your calculator and try it. Pick any number. You know, negative 2 to the power of 0 is 1. 125 to the power of 0 is 1. 88.1 to the power of 1. Oops, to the power of 0, sorry. Is 1. Anything to the power of 0, right now, accept it, move on, we'll explain it in a second. But just so that this is in your notes, anything to the power of 0 is 1. All right, let's draw a box around this and keep going. So there's my chart. Power of 0 is 1. And the power of 1, the number just stays the same. Power of 2 is that number and another one, right? 2 of them. Power of 3 is 3 of them. So on, so on, and so on. So here's my new trick for you. You just learned the trick of anything with a power of 0 is 1. Here's my next trick. What is the difference between negative 2 to the 4th and negative 2 to the 4th? Because if I read them out loud to you, negative 2 to the 4th, negative 2 to the fourth. If I read them out loud, they're not any different. They're the same, right? So let's test it in your calculator. Let's try this one. Negative 2 to the fourth. What do you get? Okay, negative 16. And let's try this other one. I heard Carlos say something. What's different? Like, what's visually different about them? Yeah, it's surrounded by parentheses. So, do you think that's going to change my answer? Are they different answers? But they're the same problem. When I read them out loud, negative 2 to the fourth and negative 2 to the fourth. So let's work with this one with parentheses first. Can you expand it? Can you tell me what that means? Can you tell me what negative 2 to the fourth means? Paige, what does it mean? Negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2. You're right. Negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2. That's what it means. But this one does not mean negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2. I'm going to tell you this trick right here. The exponent belongs, it's not how you spell belongs, to what it touches. And this is new from elementary school. The exponent only belongs to what it touches. Aaron, does your paper look like mine? The exponent belongs to only what it touches. The exponent only belongs to what it touches. So here's my question. In this one right here, the one with the parentheses, what does the exponent touch? It touches the parentheses. And what do the parentheses touch? Negative 2. So we're repeating the parentheses. The parentheses happen 4 times. And what are the parentheses? Negative 2, negative 2, negative 2, negative 2. In this problem, what does the exponent touch? Just the 2. It doesn't touch that negative. It only touches the 2. So in this problem, it means 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. It means 2 4 times. And what goes in front? Haley, you need to have your computer put away, please. A negative. So there is a difference. Your notes don't look like mine. There's a box drawn around it. That blank that we left open, we filled in. This is the new stuff. This is the stuff that's going to unfortunately be thrown in to try to trick you. Let's try a little bit more review information. If I gave you a problem, negative 2a, b, 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 is there something that you could do with this involving exponents? Negative 2a, b, 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 b. Is there something involving exponents you could do, Lily?
Negative 2 the exponents 4a and
How many?
3a and
Negative 2, a to the third, b to the fourth. So it goes both ways, right? You can take something and make it easier using exponents, right? Something big and make it easier to write. Or you can take something with exponents and expand it, right? Make it bigger. Okay, so try this one. Negative or 3, negative 4, x, 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 y, y, t. How can you rewrite that using exponents? Negative or 4, negative 3, x, 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 y, y, t. How can that be rewritten? It's really big right now. How can I make it smaller? How can I make it easier to write, Refugio?
You can do negative 12 and x, what is that, 3?
X to the third, y squared,
And
t. And then Refugio took it even a step further. He knows that these are both values, right? Numbers. So I can combine them. Negative 12, because 4 times negative 3 is negative 12. I'm going to go one step further than Refugio. Refugio, I'm going to say you should put them like this. T, x to the third, y squared. Why did I switch them around? Aaron, why?
Put them in alphabet.
To put your variables in alphabetical order, correct. Squinting at their seats.
Miss Long, you got good observation. Ooh, 2020.
All right, let's try this one. What if I gave you this problem? Negative 2x squared plus 4y. And I tell you that x is 2 and y is negative 3. Plus. Negative 2x squared plus 4y. So that means it's negative 2 and 2 squared plus 4, negative 3. Ladies and gentlemen, here's my hint to you. Whenever you substitute, use parentheses. Whenever you substitute, use parentheses. Then you could type this straight into your calculator.
So when we do it, use parentheses, not just oh, so much easier.
Which is negative 2 times 4 plus negative 12, I think, if I'm simplifying right. And negative 2 times 4 is negative 8 plus negative 12. Do you get negative 20? Test it.
Yeah.
I mean, don't always go with what I say. A negative. 4 times negative 3 is negative 12. Okay, let's turn to the next page and let's talk a little bit about powers of 10. Okay, powers of 10. Okay, here's my disclaimer. What does a disclaimer mean?
Like,
Warning us.
Don't get mad at me,
I only ate Chipotle
like
last
the
night.
YouTubers are like, disclaimer, I got all this stuff myself.
Right.
I can do what I want with my money, so just like
Right? So disclaimer, it's a warning, right? It's a, like, before you start yelling at me,
Go get some Starbucks.
here's the information, right? This is my way of saying I told you this. Don't say I didn't. This only works with base 10. So do not come to me and say, but Mrs. Long, you told me this would always... No, I did not. This is not always going to work. This only works with base 10.
Hold up. Miss Long, you just said that I told you not. That's a disclaimer, I think.
Got it.
Oh.
It only works with base 10. What does it mean to have a base 10? Base 10. What does base 10 mean? Alexis? The bottom number, the big number, is a 10. Okay, here we go. Skip 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines.
7?
Yep. 7 or 8, it's fine. All right, we're going to do 10 to the power of 0, but we're going to skip it. Go one above it. 10 to the power of 1 equals what? 10, right? Ten to the power of 2 equals what? How do you know 100?
Because sometimes
10 times 10 is 100. I mean, you should
Don't you just add another
You should be able to do this technically without a calculator. Carlos, what's your trick?
you just add zero.
Yeah, there's an exponent of 2, so that means I'm going to have 2 zeros. So 10 to the third power is what? 1,000, because my exponent is 3, meaning I'm going to have 3 zeros. Now again, this is a disclaimer. 9 to the third power does not equal 900. Or 9,000. 3 zeros. That doesn't work. It's only if you have a 10 as your base. So 10 to the fourth power is
10,000.
10,000. It has 4 zeros. And 10 to the fifth is 100,000. It has 5 zeros. Again, this only works if your power is 10. So now let's talk going backwards. Ladies and gentlemen, look, there are 5 zeros. There are 4 zeros. There are 3 zeros. There are 2 zeros. There is 1 zero. So 10 to the power of 0 means there are 0 zeros, which means it's just, that's why anything to the power of 0 is 1. Anything.
You want to tell you what this always reminds me of?
Hold on, we'll talk about it in a second. Let's get this through because I don't want to run out of room. So now let's take it a step further. If it had 6 zeros, right, it would be a power of 6. If there were 4 zeros, it'd be a power of 4. If it was a power of 2, there's going to be 2 zeros. Ladies and gentlemen, what do you think happens if it's a power of negative 1?
No, 0 goes on first.
Alexis?
It will become a decimal.
There's still 1 0.
Just negative?
It just goes the other way.
Wait, so there's no like decimal?
But isn't
So
that
Well, look,
okay?
It's a decimal.
it's a decimal.
It's a point 10.
So 10 to the negative 2, it's an exponent of 2, right? So that means there are 2 zeros, but since it's a negative 2, it's going to go
Backwards.
0, 0, 1. Oh, wait, my decimal.
I'm confused.
0.01. You always have to have something here
You move
in
it
front of the decimal.
So you move it.
10 to the negative 3, how many zeros are going to be there? 3.
Pushing the stuff this way.
But since it's a negative 3, right? I move my decimal 1, 2, 3 right there. And 10 to the negative 4, if I put my 1 down, right? If it was a positive 4, I'd put 4 zeros. But it's a negative 4, so I'm going to put 4 zeros on the other side. And I'm going to move my decimal 1, 2, 3 right there. And 10 to the negative 5, if it was a positive 5, I'd put 5 zeros behind it, but it's a negative 5, so I put 5 zeros in front of it. And it's 0.00001. Positive exponents, if it's a power of 10, positive exponents, you move your decimal to the right. 1 space every time. Negative exponents, you move your decimal to the left every time. Okay, that's